Founded in 1682 by William Penn, Europeans first settled in Pennsylvania in 1637, although several tribes of indigenous people occupied the land for centuries before this. Pivotal in the French and Indian Wars, the 7 Years' War, the American Revolution, and the United States Civil War, it is no surprise that with such a rich history, our state has developed a culture that is distinctive and multifaceted. Full of legends and real-life heroes who risked everything for their beliefs, today Pennsylvania retains strong elements of folk culture developed by a combination of ideologies practiced by the varied ethnicities of original settlers, Native Americans, and shared experiences. Legends and lore passed down over centuries reveal philosophies that are as superstitious as they are religious and even scientific, resulting in a microculture found nowhere else. You are listening to Pennsylvania Life, Legends, and Lore, where we believe that behind every great story, there is a nugget of truth. In each episode, your hosts, Ethan and Holly, will attempt to uncover that truth and preserve a part of our incredible Pennsylvanian lifestyle.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to Pennsylvania Life, Legends, and Lore. As always, I'm Holly.
And I'm Ethan.
And today we are going to be talking about a Pennsylvania staple dessert, which is the shoofly pie. And to dive right in, we're going to explain to you guys what a shoofly pie is and what is in it. So the shoofly pie is a type of sweet molasses crumb pie, which is associated with Pennsylvania Dutch cuisine. With its rich flavor, gooey syrup, brown sugar, and crumb topping, this delicious treat has been a longtime staple in central Pennsylvania and a must-try for all pie enthusiasts. So the star of the show in a shoofly pie is the molasses, but it's also typically composed of flour, brown sugar, water, spices, and sometimes egg. The pie is topped with a crumb mixture and served in a flaky pie crust. Shoofly pie is like a coffee cake, but with a gooey molasses bottom. And like we'll get into, there are different types of shoofly pie and also shoofly cake, of which you like none.
That is correct. I do not like shoofly pie.
Or shoofly cake.
Or shoofly cake or pie.
Crazy.
Normal.
We'll get into our debate here in a little then. So a little bit of history for you on the shoofly pie and why we are talking about it in the month of July. So usually consisting of a basic pie crust with a cake-like molasses-flavored filling and crumbled flour, sugar, and butter topping, this humble pie has a convoluted history. Though closely associated with the Pennsylvania Dutch community, shoofly pie's popularity has extended well beyond the farm since its first official appearance in the late 1800s. While shoofly pie has been a staple of Moravian, Mennonite, and Amish cuisine, there isn't a lot of concrete information about its origins, and most of the legends concerning the pie are myths, which includes the persistent belief that the name comes from flies being attracted to the sweet filling.
The first sizable group of Amish immigrants arrived in America around 1730 from Germany and Switzerland and settled near Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. Pies of all types were integral to the culture of these settlers, and they ate them at any time of the day. The most famous of these pies was the shoofly pie, which originated as a variation of the treacle tart. Treacle is the British generic name for any syrup made during the refining of sugar cane. During the 17th century, treacle was used chiefly as a cheap form of sweetener. By the late 1700s, refined sugar became affordable to the masses in Britain and overtook treacle as a general sweetener. However, molasses was often substituted for treacle in colonial American recipes. Many earlier cookbooks have molasses pie and cake recipes. As the very earliest settlers came to North America by boat, they brought with them the staple of their diet, long-lasting, non-perishables that would survive long boat trips: flour, brown sugar, molasses, lard, salt, and spices. Arriving in the new land during the late fall, the settlers had to live mostly on what they had brought with them until the next growing season. Women in these communities were masters of art of making dough and concocted a pie from the limited selection that could be found. The resourcefulness led to the creation of the Shoofly pie.
Since this original version called for pantry essentials like butter, flour, sugar, cinnamon, nutmeg, coffee, and molasses, Shoofly pie was inherently inexpensive to make, which made it popular among home bakers. Due to the absence of eggs and the time frame in which settlers arrived in the central PA region, historians conclude Shoofly pie was originally a winter dish. Hens generally lay fewer eggs in the colder weather, and molasses could be stored in the cold weather without fear of it fermenting. A pie without eggs produces a long shelf life. Instead of eggs, baking powder was used to levy the pie. The use of baking powder places its invention firmly after the Civil War in the 1870s, when the Pennsylvania Dutch began using baking powder. The addition of eggs was made in the 1920s. According to historian William Weaver, director of the Keystone Center for Study of Regional Foods and Food Tourism, Shoofly pie was first introduced as a coffee cake in 1876 at the U.S. Centennial in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, to celebrate the 100th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence. There actually exists a saying, Shoofly pie on the 4th of July. Weaver affirms that between 1876 and the early 1880s, the Shoofly cake migrated to a pie shell because it was easier to eat as a handheld slice of pie without a plate or fork, so it appealed to farmhouse cooks. As the popularity of the pie grew to its taste and simplicity, Shoofly pie gradually became a regularly stocked dish in Pennsylvania households. Customarily, it was served up only for breakfast, or in the evenings with supper, or as a field break snack with coffee. Though it is now often eaten as a dessert, this hearty treat in some areas of Pennsylvania is still a breakfast staple, dipped in a mug of coffee and usually eaten by hand. So, as we touch base, that's why we are doing this podcast on Shoofly pie in July, which I had never heard of. Shoofly pie on the 4th of July.
I have not either.
So that was a fun little fact that neither one of us knew. But I didn't have Shoofly pie on the 4th of July.
No, neither did I. 'Cause it's
I just think it's, this is Meg interjecting, it's interesting that it started as a cake and then went to a pie, so that, from what I read in the research I did, so basically, like, farmhands could just come up to the
grab a piece.
kitchen, grab a piece, and go.
Mm-hmm.
And also, it was eaten at any time of day.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't, it's like we think of pies as desserts. Well, this was just like, you could have it in the morning, you could have it at dinner, you could have
it is sweet though, like, which I guess like you eat like coffee cakes for breakfast, but I don't know. It just seems weird to eat a pie in the morning.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's odd.
You want nothing to do with Shoofly pie.
So
no, it's odd.
So we did a little tasting, which I will post some of the video from that little tasting that we did of making it. And I had never made it. Being somebody who grew up in the Finger Lakes, I never heard of Shoofly pie until I moved here. And actually our little tasting, because I made one myself, is the first time that I've ever tasted it, because I couldn't get past the name or the variations, which is what we'll probably be talking about next. But I couldn't get past the description. Like, it was like, no, I can't eat that. Like, honestly, it does not look.
It doesn't look appealing either. No.
So, but I made one, and I found an original Amish recipe handed down for, like, it was this woman's, like, great grandmother's recipe. So that came with her. And mine, according to my husband, was not as sweet as he is used to, and had more of a little bit of a bitter bite to it. It definitely had more of like the almost like bitterness of coffee in it. I also can absolutely say I do not like it. But if I had to choose one of them, it would be cake. I didn't mind it in the cake as much because it wasn't as in your face.
Yeah.
Like the flavor wasn't as in your face. It was kind of dispersed.
And I feel like a cake gets more, like, you still have like some of the gooiness of it, but I feel like the pies, especially as we'll get into the two different kinds of pies, like you really get like a wet, gooey
it's
texture in the
it's
pie.
something.
Where that kind of, it's hit or miss whether you get some of that in the cake. It's more of the cake like consistency that you're used to.
Mm-hmm.
But
I did not partake.
yeah, you really just wanted no part. So I stand alone. I like it. I think it's good. I like the pie or the cake. So, as we just discussed, there are some variations, 2 variations to the pie,
Those 2 variations are a dry bottom and a wet bottom.
which again does not sound great.
Nope.
Does not put any points towards the
Shoofly.
already weird name of shoofly pie.
So when I heard that, like the first time I was introduced to shoofly pie, I think it was at Mem's house for some family event or holiday. Josh and I were dating, and it was like, "Oh, you got to try this wet bottom shoofly pie," and it's like, what? Because all I think of when I hear wet bottom is like a wet diaper.
Yeah.
Like something soggy and nasty, and then of course it kind of looks like poop in there.
It does.
But and then like the visual of fly, like why anyone puts fly in the name of a food.
Yeah.
No. So I was just like thinking like this pie that had dead flies baked into it and was like mushy and wet with like fly guts.
Yeah, it really
That's the
has
visual.
nothing going for it until you, well, and you guys tried it and didn't like it, but until you try it, like just hearing about it, like really doesn't have anything like in the positive.
So there's 2 options, a flaky or a mealy crust for the pie dough. This determines whether the bottom of the pie is thick or barely there. Recipes differentiating between the wet and dry versions appeared in the early 20th century. The dry version was suitable for dunking in a cup of coffee. Some cooks put chocolate icing on top for a chocolate shoofly pie. Some use spices, some do not.
I'd never heard of putting chocolate icing on top of it. I've always just seen the top of it as like the crumbly cakiness on top.
Yeah.
And I don't think we tried any with chocolate
No,
on top.
I was tempted to try it, but I wanted to keep mine like authentic
Traditional,
to that
yeah.
recipe. But I did read a couple instances
that
where
would
people
add like a weird flavor. Like
Yeah.
just
I read a couple instances where people like use Nutella,
that makes
like
a little
spread.
more sense.
but I'm just like that.
It
It
just
will
sounds
almost
weird.
be overly
Yeah.
sweet.
Like it's sweet enough on its own, and it has enough going for it. Like I feel like adding chocolate just, oof.
Even if it was dunked in
So
chocolate, I'd like it.
So do they put the chocolate icing on instead of using all the spices to like not make it so
What I read
overwhelming?
is no, like they just
They make it the way it is, and then
and
add
then
chocolate.
add chocolate or dunk it in chocolate.
We'll have to have you try a piece in some chocolate and see if it makes it any better.
Smothered in
Well,
Slathered, not
you know,
just
at least we can whatever they had in, because you know it was the Puritans essentially that came over. I mean, Amish cultures stem
Right.
from that, but whatever they missed out in, you know, keeping their lives simple, they made up for in sweets.
Right, that's for sure. So what's a dry bottom shoofly pie?
The dry bottom version resembles a soft gingerbread or dry cake-like texture, baked until fully set. The dry bottom is considered the original version, producing a consistency that is meant for dipping in coffee.
So that's the kind that they make to go out in the fields. You get like a dry piece of pie. I feel like most people, if you ask them which kind they prefer, nobody says dry bottom.
Probably not. I don't know that I've ever heard anybody mention that is their favorite.
I'm just cracking up over here listening to the conversation about how nobody likes dry bottoms. Everybody likes wet bottoms.
See?
I'm
This
just
pie
thinking
just
about.
is weird. So wet bottom features a tender molasses custard topped with crumbs, and the bottom is a stickier, gooier, custard-like consistency. More prevalent in the Pennsylvania Dutch region, this version came about in the 1920s by accident. A pie didn't get cooked enough, and some people discovered that they liked it that way. Though both versions are traditionally flavored with molasses, the wet version has a stronger taste of the dark syrup. So wet bottom pie is a similar texture to a pecan pie, just without the pecans. But that bitter, almost harsh flavor of the molasses can really turn some people off. In the dry bottom version, the molasses ribbons through layers of cake so it's easier on the palate. In some bakeries that cater to tourists, this key ingredient of Shoofly pie is often toned down or replaced altogether with a milder, sweeter corn syrup. However, just as many Pennsylvania Dutch bakeries would shudder at the thought of replacing that flavorful syrup. Which one you'll get will depend on where you go. Dry bottom, wet bottom, bitter, sweet. Like any recipe that's been around for over a century, there are as many variations of Shoofly pie as there are bakers in central Pennsylvania, giving this delicious oddity the mark of a true classic. Everyone agrees the Shoofly pie is best when slightly warmed with whipped cream on top. If you like sweet desserts, you'll probably love Shoofly pie. Although, you're not a big sweets person, so that doesn't count to you. Are you usually a sweets person?
I am probably more sweet than salty, but I'm not like heavily one way or the other.
Yeah.
It's something about, there's a little bit of an aftertaste for me, and the molasses, the little bitter bite at the end. It just
doesn't do it.
I tried Carol's because she made her wet bottom, and
which was delicious, by the way.
Yeah, and Josh is like, he told me, he's like, if you haven't, like, yours does not, like, you followed the traditional recipe, but yours does not taste as, like, nearly as sweet as my mom's usually tastes. So you gotta taste my mom's. So I took a tiny little bit because, the gluten sensitivity and everything. So I took a tiny little bit, but I still it's the consistency of it. It's just like,
you still just can't get past the name. You put it in your mouth and you're like, this is wet bottom Shoofly pie. It just doesn't do it.
The flavor was better for sure, but like if there were other desserts there, I would probably choose
pass it up.
Else.
Yeah. We should have had ice cream and stuff with it.
I know,
that would have been good. That. A lot of people said they wanted milk. They were like, milk would be really good with this.
The cake, I could totally see that.
So what does a Shoofly pie taste like? The batter's combination of molasses and spices creates an almost chocolate-like taste. The final product yields an intense sweetness and cake-like texture. While you can refrigerate your Shoofly pie, it doesn't need to be refrigerated. Shoofly pie will keep covered on the countertop for a few days at room temperature. One alternative is to freeze your Shoofly pie if you don't plan to eat it right away. To defrost, place the pie in a tin foil and thaw it at room temperature. Now this is if you're making it without eggs. If you go with a recipe with eggs in it, I would advise refrigerating. So how did Shoofly pie get its name? The unusual name is presumed to be a reference to the fact that the sticky sweet pie is so attractive to flies that they have to be constantly shooed away from it. Again, that's deterring people from trying it. However, this is a myth that originated with author Patricia Browning Stevens. According to Stevens, the unusual name of Shoofly pie came from the fact that pools of sweet, sticky molasses sometimes formed on the surface of the pie while it was cooling, inevitably attracting flies. She suggests the pie's invention stems from Pennsylvania Dutch farm wives making do with what remains in the pantry during the late winter. However, she fails to answer the question of where all the flies came from during the winter season. Historian William Weaver, who is also a 13th generation Pennsylvania Dutchman, states the name Shoofly was derived from Shoofly the boxing mule. Shoofly was a popular traveling circus animal in southeastern Pennsylvania at that time and his name originated from a popular song at the time, Shoofly, Don't Bother Me. The animal was trained to stand on his hind legs and wore boxing gloves on his front hooves. His frequent opponent was a horse. Shoofly was so beloved that they named products in his honor, including Shoofly flour, Shoofly horse powder, and the very popular brand of molasses from Philadelphia, Shoofly molasses. Now I can't read about this, and I'm going back to our love of TV shows. Do you know what I'm talking about?
No.
No?
I mean, I know you're talking about The Office, but I don't know what you're talking
No, I'm not talking about The Office.
Nope. I got nothing.
Really?
Nope.
Little Sebastian?
Oh, yeah.
For any of you Parks and Rec fans, reading about this beloved donkey, or what was it? A donkey?
Mule.
Mule. Same thing.
Oh,
Who gets all of this stuff named after him. Just reminds me of Little Sebastian from Parks and Rec, if you happen to watch. But that was a tangent that I need to come back from.
Don't know really how you got there, but okay.
It's a beloved mule. It's a beloved mini horse.
Okay, I see where you're going now. I was going to say, mule, mini horse, different.
Different, but kind of the same. If it's so beloved that they name so much stuff after it.
I see what you're saying. Yes.
That's where
Now I got where you were going.
You really didn't follow my trail there.
No.
Another theory is that because it originated as a Pennsylvania Dutch specialty, it is possible that Shoofly is an alteration of an unidentified German word. Shoofly pie was called molasses crumb cake, and it was called very different things in Pennsylvania Dutch language, which we cannot pronounce, and I'm not going to try. But before its modern name became popular in the 20th century, it was molasses crumb pie or soda rivel cake, and the rivels are the lumps of food like on top of the cake. So according to the Encyclopedia of American Food and Drink, the name Shoofly pie was used in the 1880s, but its first appearance was not recorded into print until 1926. The pie is also mentioned in the song Shoofly Pie, an apple pan downy popularized by Dinah Shore in the 1940s. So where can Shoofly pie be found in this area? Throughout most of American restaurants and bakeries, you'll rarely find Shoofly pie, but most central Pennsylvania bakeries and restaurants sell this regional favorite. In Amish country, this pie draws standing room only crowds. Bird in Hand is famous for Grandma Schmucker's Shoofly pie. The bakery prepares the Shoofly pie from an old family recipe handed down for generations and fine-tuned by Grandma Schmucker. It is one of the Bird in Hand's bakery and cafe's most popular items and can be enjoyed with a hot cup of coffee or tea. You can also order Grandma Schmucker's classic treat online to stash in your freezer or share it with a friend. I did not know that.
I did not know that either.
I feel like we're such an odd area because I feel like there are so many foods and different things that we're just so accustomed to having on like a regular basis that once you go like outside of central Pennsylvania, it's just like people don't know what you're talking about.
Correct. Like
It's bizarre.
dippy eggs is a thing around here.
Yeah.
That
Well,
if you
dippy eggs were they're a thing other places. They don't call them dippy eggs.
Right.
we've
Right. It's the
definitely
name
we have
of
definitely been to places that I've said like I'll take dippy eggs and they look at me like
Yeah.
I'm an idiot.
if you go into like a
They're
restaurant
sunny
and say
side up.
yeah.
Right. Right.
Like the normal term is sunny side up.
Right.
But it's like
But everybody around here uses I
Dippy
should say
eggs.
not everybody, but most people if I said, hey, I want dippy eggs, they know exactly what
Right.
you're talking about.
Right.
so another one that gets me, this chicken and waffles thing.
Yeah, that one doesn't.
I don't
I can
understand.
pass on
like,
chicken
but
and waffles.
why would you? Waffles is a breakfast food. It's a
Uh-huh.
breakfast food. It is served with fruit, sometimes with cream, not my preferred way. Sometimes powdered sugar, also not my preferred way. Or straight up butter and syrup, which
Mhm.
is how I like
Right.
my waffles. Putting poultry
And gravy.
meat
Yeah.
on the waffles and
Uh-huh.
then smothering it in gravy that tastes like lard
Mm-hmm.
or flour
Yep.
with nothing else, and then pouring salt all over it. Like, I don't understand.
It makes no sense. Like, all throughout, like, my childhood, like, my church does chicken and waffle suppers. And I'd be one of the weirdos who I'd eat my waffle with syrup, and then I'd eat the other food. Like, because that's a breakfast food.
Yeah.
Like you said, like, you eat that with your syrup, and then I'd eat, like, the chicken and mashed potatoes and whatever other sides. Like, they don't go together, but everyone else in my family loves it.
So, every Sunday, a lot of times we go out for lunch on Sunday after church, and we'll go to the brewery here, and they make a buffalo chicken and waffle.
Ew, no, they don't.
Yes, they do. And guess who gets it? Like,
Oh.
Josh is always between that and, like, they'll have,
So
like,
he likes it.
Yes. They have, like, other specials and things, but, like, so if they have a special or whatever, he'll be like, oh, hemming and hawing. But, man, they introduced those buffalo-style chicken and waffles, and I'm just like, I can't, like...
So is the buffalo sauce just on the
it's
chicken?
on the chicken. Yeah, so they smother the chicken and like, buffalo sauce, then put it over the waffles, and then pour the gravy over.
There's gravy on it, too?
Yeah.
Ew.
I know.
I'm sorry to this brewery, but that just sounds bad. But clearly
Josh
there are people that like it.
I mean, it's popular, and, like, Josh says
Oh.
it's fantastic, but I've just never been, like, I can't.
The chicken and waffles to begin with isn't appetizing, let alone
I
adding
can't,
buffalo
like,
sauce.
and I'm sorry, the gravy that they put on it is so thick most of the time, it looks like puke to me. I personally think, I mean, all of the chicken and waffles I've seen around here, it's, like, such thick, like, floury gravy that I'm like, that just looks like something puked on your plate.
So Meg came to this area and she's like, what in the world do you people eat? You eat chicken and waffles with wet bottom shoofly pie for dessert.
Honestly, and I mean no offense in saying this, but that everyone doesn't just keel over from heart attacks here. Because everything is salty and floury and heavy, like heavy, like full of sugars and like things like that. And
right,
like,
which makes sense going from this podcast. Like they make things with what they have,
right,
and things to last.
It totally makes sense. And also big farming area, so. At one point, that was all done by hand. You burnt that stuff off.
Right.
But.
And I feel like we're an area where, like, generations pass down, like, all of this food stuff. Like, you learn how to make your grandmother's recipes.
Yeah.
Like, you pass those down from generation to generation so they continue, whereas other places may or may not have things like this, but they just kind of fizzle out. But by golly, we stick to our unhealthy ways.
Well, it was just funny. That was probably one of the biggest learning curves in our marriage, because I came from, well, both of my parents were in the medical field, and so everything was
no salt,
low sodium, no sodium, low fat, leafy greens, like I mean, you know. And so we got married, and I'm like, Josh would be like, what are we having for dinner tonight? Oh, I thought I'd make a big salad and maybe grill some chicken to put on top of it. Okay, so what else are we having for dinner?
What's after that?
Like, well, it's gonna be a big salad. And then I came to the realization that dinner needed to be a meat. It's okay if there's like a green side. And like, then there has to be like a starch.
Yeah.
Like potatoes.
Yeah.
Or
but I feel like this is an area too. Like, if your table's too big, you better have a salt and pepper shaker on both sides. Because God forbid everybody needs to have access to the salt.
The salt and pepper.
Yeah. cracks me up. But yeah, we are a very weird area of
Unique.
yeah.
Not weird. Unique.
I think it's weird.
It's weird a little, but
It's just
unique is a nice
it's
word.
just weird to me that things that I grew up knowing and like eating and things like that, like when you go outside of this area, it's just nobody has a clue. Aren't like pierogies and kielbasi? That's like
Polish. I
that's
believe.
Polish. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I mean they're all those countries were very close, and at one point, all part of the same region until like I think after it was like after World War II that all those places got really broken up into how they are today. I could be wrong on that, so if I'm wrong, I apologize. But
are they a thing?
Sandtart cookies.
I never heard of them until I moved here.
I feel like that's your Pennsylvania Dutch thing. You have to do that.
That's one that you'll sample.
Mm-hmm. That was one that I didn't like growing
Although
up, and
I
then
didn't-
all of a sudden I just decided that I loved it.
Until we like started going to MEMS and stuff, I'd never heard of sand tarts.
Yeah, someone needs to take a few lessons from them before.
Whoa.
So we can
Meaning
start
yourself, right?
Mass making. I would happily learn.
I
how
was
to
like,
make
you
them.
better not be looking at me.
No, I've tried to make them before, but
You tell them, Holly.
They're tough.
we can never get them as thin as she gets them. So we need to take a lesson.
I have
It's
the
literally
recipe.
like paper thin.
We used her recipe, but we never got them rolled thin enough without them like turning into a black Charlie.
I have her recipe, and there was one year I did them pretty darn good.
Mm-hmm.
Josh said, "Mom can still get
Pretty
it just
darn good.
just a
Not
little
quite-
thinner, just a little thinner." But then
Our standards are too high with our mem
I know,
expectations.
she is a phenomenal cook. But then I was diagnosed with the gluten sensitivity. And you want to try making sand tarts with gluten-free flour. It's a lesson in going insane.
Yeah, I would imagine just trying to make them normally
Mhm.
is hard enough, let alone trying to make them gluten free. We'll have to look into that one.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that one's just
I feel like I heard that is Pennsylvania Dutch thing. Could be wrong. Possibly.
it follows it. Does it follow like almost an exact recipe as a sugar cookie?
It's
don't-
very similar.
I don't remember what's all in it.
It's just mostly like the thickness of it that makes it a sand tart. We're getting way off.
Yeah. Derailed.
Sand tart versus sugar cookie. I'll have to look
Well,
into that one.
we can definitely look into that one for Christmas. But our next episodes,
Oh, we don't even know what that is.
well, you are going to be
Uh-oh.
having baby Ella.
Well, that's true too.
So
That'll be my next episode.
so our next episodes are going to be all agent
That's true.
interviews. You're gonna get to know some of the agents that work in our
Our
office.
staff
Their
stories,
staff stories.
Yeah. That'll be
meaning
exciting.
our employees' stories, not staff infection stories.
Should have thought about
How
that a
did you
little
just?
bit
How
better.
did you bring on
That's
that?
what I think of when I say staff stories.
What is happening inside of your brain?
I can blame it on the pregnancy.
You had a staph infection, not like staph, like a shepherd's staff or hook.
You went there because our child walks outside with.
Or
Okay,
just
so you know the
internal
flower
employees.
hooks that So Riley walks around carrying one of those as like her little like staff, like just walking up and down the sidewalk. It's the funniest thing. Okay, so that's where you went. I went somewhere different.
I went to
Neither one of us-
employees.
All right, well, that's
I'm sorry.
just because that's what it actually is. Yes. So we will fill in a little bit while I take some time with our hopefully not too ginormous child. And you guys can get to know some of our wonderful staff here at the Shoofly agency who I promise are not like us.
That's
No, we're better. All right. Any more off-track conversation before we sign off here?
No, I think that was sufficient.
All right, guys. Well, as always, thanks for sticking it out with us and hanging out till the end if you did. And we appreciate you guys listening. And I believe Meg said she's going to post the video of all of us here at the office giving our Shoofly pies and cakes a try. So check that out and let us know what your favorite is, whether you like cake or pie, or wet or dry. All right, take care, guys. Thanks for listening.
If you liked what you heard in this episode, be sure to follow Pennsylvania Life, Legends, and Lore on your preferred podcast platform to stay up to date on new content. Pennsylvania Life, Legends, and Lore is produced by Harv Productions, LLC.